You may or may not be aware that over the last few weeks there have been what the press is calling violent protests outside the Indian embassy in London. So much so that the Prime Minister of India has phoned Boris Johnson and asked him to reassure that the Indian embassy and its staff would be kept safe. So what's going on? Well, it's an interesting story, and it's one that reveals quite a few aspects of a particular religion, that religion, of course, being Islam. There's a region, the Kashmiri region, which is contested by India and Pakistan. Both of them claim it for themselves. It's all a bit of a mishmash. It's China have some administration in there, India and Pakistan. But the region, the part of it that belongs to it, is administered by India, is the only Muslim majority region in India. And this is the first revealing part of this. It has had a special status in India because it's Muslim majority, and essentially refused to live alongside everyone else, according to the same rules as everyone else. So there's a lesson in that, and it's a lesson that many of us keep trying to drive home, which is that Muslims, I'm not talking about every individual Muslim, but Muslims as a whole, en masse, refuse to live with everyone else. There's just no examples of them happily getting along with everyone according to the same rules. There aren't any examples. And the region itself used to be Buddhist, it used to be Hindu, and then along came Islam, and guess what it is now? So what's happened is that the Prime Minister of India has revoked that special status. He revoked it recently. And what was the situation prior to the revocation of this special status was extreme oppression of minorities. Hindus, for example, were not allowed to buy property there, and other restrictions. And this reveals something else that you will no doubt have heard, and that is that when Muslims are in a minority, they are all about minority rights. When they're in the majority, there are no minority rights. And once again, I can't think of an exception to this rule. In the 90s, as early as the 90s, recently, if you like, as the 90s, there were hundreds of thousands. The figures I've read are between 300 and 600,000 Hindus in the region. Now there are about 2,000. They have left because of terror attacks, because of oppression, coming from Muslims. It has been ethnically cleansed of Hindus. The region has been ethnically cleansed of Hindus. Again, because Muslims, Islam, will not abide minority rights when it is in charge, and it demands separate status and special treatment. And all that the Prime Minister of India has done is revoke that and say, look, anyone from India can live there, anyone from India can work there, anyone from India can buy property there. They have, in other words, equalised people's rights in that region and stopped Muslims bullying everyone, as they tend to do. Now, this has transferred itself to Europe, to the UK. We have this now. We have imported all these problems from all over the world so that they're happening right here and right now. And of course, the world was silent when Hindus were being ethnically cleansed from Kashmir. But now there's all sorts of furore. Even Jeremy Corbyn is now demanding an analysis of human rights in the area. Where was your demand for human rights analysis when the Muslims were trampling on the Hindus, Mr. Corbyn? There wasn't any. The world will start suddenly sitting up and complaining because Muslims are not being forced to live like everyone else, but their privilege, their ability to oppress minorities has been taken away. And now, all of a sudden, there's a human rights emergency. Muslims are no longer allowed to bully people in the region. This is completely insane. I keep saying this, I'll say it again, the world is completely upside down. Islam and Muslims has a complete golden ticket to do whatever it likes. The UN never bothers with the horrific human rights abuses committed by Muslims and in Muslim countries. But if Israel puts a toe wrong, it's all over it. We have a pro-Islam world. It is the Islamization of the world. And suddenly when Muslims are asked to live like everyone else, they are suddenly oppressed. They are the victims. And this is exactly what has transferred here to the UK. Asking Muslims, expecting Muslims to muck in and just rub along with the rest of us is somehow oppressing them. Nonsense. Utter nonsense. It's Islam that is the oppressor. And the final point on this, do we really believe that we have a Great Britain in the future? When cities have Muslim majorities, say Birmingham, for example, do you think that when Birmingham becomes Muslim majority, which isn't too far away, that there won't be demands for autonomy, for special status? They will ask for self-rule. This is already being hinted at. In the wake of Brexit, there were hints that London should actually break away from the rest of the UK and live by its own rules. This will happen again and again and again. And it will happen because Islam and Muslims can't and won't live like everyone else. They won't just be a part of Britain. They will start to seek their own autonomy. They will start to seek mini-states. And we'll have a Yugoslavia-type situation. It's inevitable. When you import the whole world, you import the strife that goes on in the world, you import the rows and the arguments, you import all the problems. And now those problems are here. And I guarantee you, unlike every other minority group in this country, Muslims will not, they already don't. We already know that Sharia is self-governing. Many Muslim communities are self-governing with Sharia. The demands for separate states and special autonomy are just round the corner. And that, I'm afraid, will be the end of Great Britain. But we still have time. We are still the vast, vast majority. Non-Muslims are still the vast, vast majority. If we can grab hold of this issue now, we still have time to save Great Britain. We still have time to lay down the law and say that everyone who lives in this country will live under Britain's laws. We will not stand by and watch while this country fragments and turns into ethnic ghettos. We must save Great Britain, or there will not be a Great Britain for future generations. If you want to save this country, as I do, join for Britain. We are not going to cower down. We are not going to be politically correct. We're going to fight for the future of this country. And we're going to do all we can to make sure that future generations can grow up in the same Britain that we know and love. Join us.